I'm Ian Allinson, I'm standing for Unite General Secretary. One of the big reasons I'm standing is I think that we're facing huge attacks from employers in terms of our jobs, our pay and conditions, and also from the government in terms of public services and our rights. And though I think we've got a huge amount to be proud of in Unite, I think we're falling well short of the union we need if we're going to take on those challenges. My background is I'm been a workplace activist for 25 years. I'm not a paid employee of the union. I've experienced at the sharp end what it's like being a union member, trying to get things done, trying to get problems addressed. I'm the only candidate in this election who shares those experiences and frustrations. The other reason that I'm standing is that I've disagreed with a couple of the major political stances that Len McCluskey's taken. So I think he was wrong to support Trident. I think if you're talking about spending £205 billion, it's hard to think of anything worse to spend it on. Instead of spending that on weapons of mass destruction, we ought to be looking at 1 million climate jobs to tackle climate change. We ought to be looking at council housing. We ought to be looking at funding our public services properly. I also think he was really wrong to fudge and backslide on free movement of labour. As far as I'm concerned, this is a workers' rights issue. We should be free to go where we please and we should be treated equally wherever we go. I think it's important that there's someone standing in this election who isn't part of the union machine. The other two candidates have been at the top of the union for the last couple of decades. I've been a workplace activist. I don't think it's helpful when we're campaigning against employers, highlighting the fat cat salaries of our directors, to have them throwing back at us what the people at the top of Unite do. We should be campaigning for greater equality, not inequality, and that's why I've pledged that if I'm elected I'll stay on my current salary rather than taking the six-figure one that a General Secretary normally gets. I think in this election members have a really clear choice. We can have more of the same with Len McCluskey, or we can turn the clock back with Gerard Coyne, who wants to see us return to the days when we bankrolled New Labour while they retained Tory anti-union laws, while they cut and privatised our public services, and while they led us into illegal wars. And on the other hand, I stand for having practical proposals to strengthen our union. We need a stronger union, not a cheap and ineffective one. And I want to see us shake up the union, make it more effective. So the attacks on Jeremy Corbyn and on Unite in the media in recent days, launched by Tom Watson, the Labour right, and their puppet in this General Secretary election, Gerard Coyne. They want to see a return to the days when we had New Labour, when Unite was bankrolling the Blairites while they were attacking our members, not repealing the anti-union legislation, pushing through cuts and privatisation and leading us into illegal wars. The reality is that voters rejected New Labour at the last two general elections, and we've seen in Scotland where Labour tried to continue with the same approach, that not only did they see the erosion of Labour's base like in England, but they've seen it virtually collapse. Having a Labour leader who actually supports trade unionists, who supports our members when they're having to fight back against bad employers and against government, has been an absolute breath of fresh air, and we should continue to support that. But I think the support that Len McCluskey's given has been inadequate. I think he was wrong to undermine Corbyn over key political issues such as Trident and free movement. I think he was wrong not to speak out in support of Corbyn after the Copeland by-election setback. The reality is that if any Labour leader, it doesn't matter who it was trying to challenge the decades of consensus around neoliberal policies of cuts and privatisation and austerity that all the parties had agreed on for years, they would be facing massive attacks from the establishment, whether you talk about the media, whether you talk about employers, or whether you talk about the majority of the Labour backbenchers. These are people, for the most part, who are only interested in their own careers and who even voted for the Tories' welfare bill. They're so out of touch with reality of the people they're supposed to represent. Going back to those days is no solution. But we need to do more than what we're doing at the moment. The Labour's lag in the polls is deeply worrying. We can't afford to have the Tories in office year after year after year. So just backing Corbyn in internal Labour elections is not good enough. We need to actually be doing grassroots campaigning, putting up fights over the issues over which Corbyn is immensely popular, whether you talk about renationalisation of the railways, investing in public services, having proper welfare and NHS and all the rest of it. We could be having a real shift in opinion in the country and helping defeat the Tories if we were doing that, rather than just bankrolling Corbyn and waiting for an election. So what I stand for is a fight back from below and sticking behind Jeremy Corbyn. I've made equality and discrimination central issues in this election campaign. One example is the argument around free movement of labour. I think this is a workers' rights issue. We should all have the right to go where we please and to be treated equally wherever we go. I've also highlighted the sexism within Unite, in particular how women officers were treated, but I think that spills over to the experience of many members and ordinary activists. We need to do much more to tackle that. I've come forward with practical proposals for strengthening Unite's equality work. I also think a key thing is to integrate that better with our industrial work. The reality is that almost all of the issues we tackle as trade unionists, week in and week out in the workplace, have an equality dimension. So, for example, if you look at things like performance management, appraisals, pay reviews, redundancy selection, they're all often discriminatory because there's an element of management discretion. Management want to pick and choose, and when they pick and choose, they often do so in a discriminatory way. And I think by not equipping our reps and our activists adequately to tackle the equality dimensions of that, we're not only meaning that we're not tackling discrimination as effectively as we should, but we're actually missing opportunities to tackle those issues in themselves. So we've got some great examples where unions have actually highlighted discrimination, for example, in performance management, and have used that to undermine the whole unfair performance management system to the benefit of everybody. In my own workplace, we've been trying to tackle discrimination on unequal pay, and we're using that to try and break a pay system that's unfair for all employees. So I think it's really important that we see equality issues as central industrial issues, not something that should be ghettoised into just within the equality committees. That has to be something the whole union takes up, and takes up much more effectively than we are doing today. And I think members have a choice between Len McCluskey, who seems to have run out of new ideas, and Gerard Coyne, who wants to take us back to the failed methods of the past. I'm putting forward practical proposals about how we could strengthen our union and make it more effective. So a few examples are that as a workplace activist, rather than someone who's been at the top of the union for decades, I know how frustrating it is that communication in the union is so patchy and poor. If you have the good fortune to be on a committee or to have a good officer who's not on holiday, you're kept in the loop. If not, it's down to luck. So I don't see why in this day and age we can't have a fortnightly email bulletin to every activist letting them know what's going on. So for example, when we've recently been in dispute, it's been quite hard to get the message out to other activists about the fact that we've been taking action and to get their support. I think when any member is facing serious issues, it should feel like you've got 1 million members behind you, not like you're being left on your own. I think another area we could improve on is about case studies of our successes. We're currently facing in my employer 1,800 UK job cuts which we're trying to fight. A lot of these job cuts are to do with offshoring. As soon as we found out about these proposals, we asked around through the Unite structure. Surely there must be some examples of Unite members having successfully fought offshoring, but through the official structures we couldn't find any. Eventually, through the grapevine, we found some fantastic examples from another sector where people had run successful campaigns against offshoring. We shouldn't have been left to look. Whenever members have successes, whether it's in a campaign or just something they've done to help organise more effectively, we should be writing those up and making those examples available to everybody so that we're not left reinventing the wheel all the time. One of the ideas that I've been trying to pursue locally in Greater Manchester is the idea of a minimum standards campaign. We've got fragmented bargaining and lots of people who aren't covered by bargaining at all now. Why can't we have across the city a standard that we set, saying, for example, that we don't want to see anybody paid below the living wage, we don't want people on 0 hours contracts, and have workplaces opting in to pay into a strike fund specifically for that campaign across the city. And we could then pick workplaces to take out on full pay to fight for those. Can you imagine in a city if we won 2, 3, 4 strikes in a short space of time, winning those kind of demands? It would be all over the local press and people would be queuing up to join the union. We need to stop just carrying on as we have. We've managed to stabilise the decline in trade unionism, but we haven't turned the corner. We've got a huge mountain to climb to unionise 20 million more workers who aren't in a union at the moment, and to make sure that we're able to win effectively for the members we've already got. So I think we need fresh ideas, new approaches, and to pick up on the wonderful work that many people are doing in workplaces right across the country and learn from those good experiences and make Unite stronger. Me whether there's a danger that by supporting me they could split the vote and let Gerard Coyne in, and I can understand that worry because Gerard Coyne is a truly awful candidate. He stands for taking the union back to the failed methods of the 1980s, backing new labour and a partnership approach industrially. These were the methods that led to a decline in union power and influence and delivered nothing for our members. But I think it would be a mistake to support Len McCluskey simply because we fear something worse. The reality is that Len McCluskey took the gamble of forcing this election when no election was necessary. He saw the threat of the right as being small enough to be prepared to take that risk. But more fundamentally, by standing, I'm avoiding Gerard Coyne being able to hoover up all the discontent that exists in this union and lead it to the right, to a direction which has no answers at all. What we need is a strong network of people who are wanting to campaign for a stronger union and build that, whoever's at the top of the union, whether that's me, McCluskey or Coyne. And the bigger the vote is for a rank and file candidate who's standing for shaking up the union and making it stronger, the easier that will be. And most importantly, I'd say, don't just vote for me, get involved, because we need to build that network. I think members have a really clear choice in this election. They can vote for Len McCluskey for more of the same. He seems to have run out of new ideas to make the union stronger. Or we can vote to turn the clock back with Gerard Coyne, who wants to see a return to the days when we bankrolled New Labour while they were attacking our members, cutting, privatising, keeping anti-union laws and taking us into illegal wars. He also stands for a partnership approach where the union is so close to employers that it's not effective for members. These methods were tried in the 80s and early 90s and they were a disaster. They saw us lose our power and influence and they didn't deliver for members. We saw union decline. We can't afford to turn the clock back with Coyne. Or we can vote for me and have new ideas for shaking up the union and make it more effective. We need a stronger union, and that will only happen with change from below. So I'm appealing to people, when the voting papers come out on the 27th of March, don't just vote for me, get involved. Whoever wins this election, we need a stronger network of people fighting to make our union stronger. All meaningful change comes from collective action from below, so get involved.